Hi everyone, this is your instructor Ms. Zink, and in this video I'm going to be talking about what sentence focus is and how to have good sentence focus, and then I'm going to show you how to do the exercises that I want you to do. So our first grammar lesson is going to be about sentence focus because poor sentence focus is one of the main reasons many of us may have unclear or confusing sentences. The other reason is I think it's important that we first talk about and learn how to write strong, clear sentences before we start talking about how to join sentences or add information into our sentences. So let's go over what makes strong, good sentence focus. So generally speaking, good writers make use of concrete subjects whenever possible. So a concrete subject is something we can see, something that actually exists and has a physical presence. So this week's sentence, the reason I'm teaching is because I couldn't think of any other way to stay in school forever. The reason is a kind of vague, abstract subject. There's no physical reason. It's just this idea. So if we wanted to have a more concrete subject, we could use I, because I is a concrete subject. People are concrete subjects. So a better sentence, and a sentence with stronger sentence focus, would be, I am teaching because I couldn't think of any other way to stay in school forever. We also want to make the subjects that we're writing about the subjects of our sentences. So a weak sentence would be, my reason for choosing this option was that it would help with my goal. If we look at the sentence, we're writing about this choice that we made. So a better sentence would be, I chose this option because it would help me with my goal. And we can see how not only is it a much clearer sentence, but it also got rid of a lot of unnecessary words that really just made the sentence much more clunky. We want to avoid using it and there as subjects whenever possible. Now, it's not bad to use it in your sentences. It's a way that we avoid having to repeat the same thing over and over again. We do have to be careful, though, about how often we use it because our reader might lose sense of what the it refers to. There is a trickier one. The only reason we really should use there is or there are is when the purpose of our sentence is to acknowledge that something exists, because that's really what there is, there are means. But a lot of times we kind of throw it in at the beginning of our sentences when it really doesn't need to be the focus. So a weak sentence would be, there were problems that developed that we did not expect. So having that there in the beginning, again, it's that kind of vague subject that's confusing. And if we think about what are we actually writing about, the focus of the sentence should be problems because we're writing about the problems that developed. So a better sentence would be, problems developed that we did not expect. We also want to generally avoid using passive verbs. Now, passive verbs are kind of tricky. Many times we get taught about passive verbs as if they're this awful thing that we should never do, and horrible writing is written in a passive way. And that's not true. In terms of clarity, active sentences, which is the opposite, active sentences are much clearer and easier to follow. But there are occasions when a passive sentence is appropriate. So for example, let's say I was writing a paper for my economics class, and I was writing about theoretical approaches, kind of to use this first sentence here. It would be appropriate for me to have theoretical approaches be in that subject spot because that's the subject I'm writing about. That's what my paper's about. But having my sentence start off with theoretical approaches, we're getting that kind of abstract kind of subject. So if that's not what I'm writing about, it would be better for me to have that more active sentence where I put the person that's doing the action at the beginning of my sentence. Because when we write a passive sentence, we have the object that's being acted upon, theoretical approaches, be in that subject spot and have that person or group that's doing the action at the end of the sentence, and that will be the economic advisors. So in terms of sentence focus and strong sentence focus and clarity, having the sentence, theoretical approaches to decrease a deficit were developed by Clinton's economic advisors, it's not as clear because we can't really see theoretical approaches. But again, if you're writing something about something like theoretical approaches or another kind of abstract topic, that should be in your subject spot, because going back to this reason, make the subject you're writing about the subject of your sentences. So again, I don't want you to think you should never write passive. It's rare when you need to use it, but if you have a good reason for using it, it's not a bad thing to do. And coming back again to this kind of weak and better sentence, when we hear the better sentence, Clinton's economic advisors developed theoretical approaches to decrease the deficit, it's much clearer because we imagine like people and we imagine this action happening. And so it just makes it easier to kind of follow the sentence. We also would ideally avoid using forms of the verb to be. So is, was, are, were. They're not bad verbs, but they're not descriptive. And so when we hear someone say is or was, we don't really get an image. And so we can kind of misunderstand what we're reading because we don't have that descriptive kind of verb or action to visualize what's being mentioned in the sentence or what's being expressed in the sentence. So a weak sentence would be, his sensitivity is lost to problems such as injustice and despair. So again, looking at this sentence, we start off with his sensitivity, which is, that kind of abstract kind of subject. Then we have is, which again, we don't get any kind of real image in our head of what is happening. And so it makes it less effective of a sentence. If we think about who is the focus of the sentence, we have his sensitivity, so it's he. And then if we look for, well, what's a word in here that could be a more descriptive verb, we could just take the lost. So instead, a better sentence would be, he lost his sensitivity to problems such as injustice and despair. So again, it's much clearer and we can get this image in our mind of what we're reading, and which is going to help us understand it. So what you can think about as you look at your own sentences to try to determine if you have good sentence focus, ask yourself, who does what to whom? And that who, the answer to that should be the who should be at the beginning of the sentence. That's going to have your stronger, clear sentence focus. So if we look at these three sentences here, and we look at to see which one is more focused and answers that question, who does what to whom? If we look at the first one, there are people who liked the movie but hated the book. So again, we know there is this kind of abstract thing. There is not doing the action of the sentence, so this one does not have good sentence focus. If we look at the second one, the movie was liked by some people, but the book was hated by them. So again, the movie is a concrete subject. We can visualize and see a movie. However, the movie's not doing the action of the sentence. Like the movie is not the one doing what to whom. Then we look at the third one. Some people liked the movie but hated the book. So this is our really good sentence focus sentence because we have a concrete subject, some people, and they're the ones doing the action of the sentence. The people are what liked the movie but hated the book. So that's going to be the more focused sentence of the three. So now let's look at the exercises I'm going to have you do. So the first set of sentences that you're going to be rewriting to give them good sentence focus more on the subject part of the sentence. So let's do the first one together. Fear of brutality from customers is a concern many pawnshop workers have. So if we ask that question, who does what to whom? So if we look at, okay, we have fear of brutality from customers is a concern. So who's concerned? Well, the people who are concerned are the pawnshop workers. So we want to move that to the beginning of the sentence. Many pawnshop workers. And then we want to have an interesting verb. We don't want to just use is, which is currently the verb of the sentence. So if I look in the sentence and I look for, well, what would be a verb that describes how they're feeling, I'm going to use fear. Many pawnshop workers fear brutality from customers. So now we have a much more focused, stronger, clear sentence. So you're going to do that for the other 4 or 5 sentences here, sorry. Then we have 5 sentences here, and we'll do the first one together. So this one is focusing more on the verbs, because some of them have, we can see with number 2, 4, and 5, they have concrete subjects. So we want to look at the verbs. So the sentence is, his improvement was enormous. So again, we have that, was not very interesting verb there. So we think about, okay, who is this sentence about? His improvement. Well, if we make that a concrete subject, it would be he. And then if we look at, well, what word in here could be the verb? And we see improvement, which could be the verb here, because improve can be formed into a verb. So he improved, and we want to do past tense because was is past tense. And then what we can do is change enormous into enormously, which is an adverb because it's describing the verb improved. So he improved enormously. So it's much clearer. We have a much more descriptive verb, and it's a more visual kind of sentence, which is going to make it easier for a reader to understand. So what you'll do is you will do the remaining sentences, write in the answers for the one that I did to show you how to do the exercise, and then do the other ones and submit them on Canvas.